Our subject today is alternative energy choices. We talked about in the first seminar about the importance of following the council and moving into the country. What are some reasons to move in the country? Do you remember? Talk to me. Why would the Spirit of Prophecy say move into the country? Grow your own food. That's right. Matter of fact, the wording is grow your own provisions. Why? Because the top problem of buying and selling will be a very serious one. So my perspective is food isn't the only issue. We're a lot more technically advanced now than we were when Ellen White made those statements. And so I look at anything that I have to pay money for. If I can't buy or sell, what am I going to do? And one of those things is electricity. When that statement was made, it was horse and buggies and kerosene lamps. Now look at how many things you do that are dependent on electricity. So what we're going to look at today is the alternative options for making your own electricity. I'm not promoting that you have to be off grid. I'm just saying it might be good to have a backup plan, or at least understand. Here are the bullet points, the things that we're going to look at today. We've got the basics of how electricity works, and then the things that you want to avoid putting on alternative energy. If you're going to generate your own electricity, it's kind of expensive. It is expensive compared to buying it. Right now, we're really spoiled. They call it BC Hydro because a lot of the electricity in BC comes from hydroelectric dams. That's one of the most cost-effective ways to make electricity. So probably your electric bill is quite reasonable. It is in Washington State where we are. We have some hydroelectric dams. There's actually 3 of them upriver from our house. But if you're going to set up your place to run off grid, let's say, then you need to get certain things not using electricity that right now you probably are. And you want to guess what 4 things you want to get off the electricity? Heat, I heard. What else? So heating your house, hot water, very good. Lights, not a big deal. I'm talking about things that you're doing to make heat. Cooking, baking, so you got an oven, you've got a stove, you've got hot water, and you've got heat in your house. Everything else can be off on the alternative energy. But you need to really, because it gets exponentially expensive to set up big enough to do all that electric heating stuff, you want to get the heat to be in another way, and we're going to talk about that. We're also going to explain the different kinds of setups. Like you can be grid tied. That's the typical ones you see with the solar panels on their house. The next one is hybrid. That's the same thing with batteries so that they'll work when it's dark. And the other is off-grid where you're not connected to the grid at all. We'll talk about all 3. Then we're going to talk about installation incentives. If you decide to invest in adding some alternative energy, there are government-funded ways to make it more affordable for you. And I took the liberty to do it specific to British Columbia. If you happen to be in Alberta, it's probably got a lot of the same things. And so we'll talk about that. And when we get to that, I'd suggest if you're interested, take a picture of the screenshot of the details about that for BC. Then we're going to look at alternative energy options, which like wind and solar and microhydro and geothermal and pedal power even. We're going to look at all of those. And then we're going to say which one's best for you, because not every property has the same things. So let's start with the basics, electric power basics.
Our current electric grid was conceived more than 100 years ago when electricity needs were simple. Power generation was localized and built around communities. Most homes had only small energy demands, such as a few light bulbs and a radio. The grid was designed for utilities to deliver electricity to consumers' homes and then bill them once a month. This limited one-way interaction makes it difficult for the grid to respond to the ever-changing and rising energy demands of the 21st century. The smart grid introduces a two-way dialogue where electricity and information can be exchanged between the utility and its customers. It's a developing network of communications, controls, computers, automation, and new technologies and tools working together to make the grid more efficient, more reliable, more secure, and greener. The smart grid enables newer technologies to be integrated, such as wind and solar energy production and plug-in electric vehicle charging. With our participation as informed consumers, this smart grid will replace the aging infrastructure of today's grid, and utilities can better communicate with us to help manage our electricity needs. The smart home communicates with the grid and enables consumers to manage their electricity usage. By measuring a home's electricity consumption more frequently through a smart meter, utilities can provide their customer with much better information to manage their electricity bills. Renewable resources, such as wind and solar, are a sustainable and growing source for electric power. However, renewable power sources are variable by nature and add complexity to normal grid operations. The smart grid provides the data and automation needed to enable solar panels and wind farms to put energy onto the grid and optimize its use. To keep up with constantly changing energy demands, utilities must turn power plants on and off depending on the amount of power needed at certain times of the day. The cost to deliver power depends on the time of day it is used. Electricity is more costly to deliver at peak times because additional, often less efficient power plants must be run to meet the higher demand. The smart grid will enable utilities to manage and moderate electricity usage with the cooperation of their customers, especially during peak demand times. As a result, utilities will be able to reduce their operating costs. By deferring electricity usage away from peak hours and having appliances and devices run at other times, electricity production is more evenly distributed throughout the day. The power being used right now was generated less than a second ago many miles away. At each instance, the amount of electricity generated must equal the consumption across the entire grid. Smart grid technologies provide detailed information that enables grid operators to see and manage electricity consumption in real time. This greater insight and control reduces outages and lowers the need for peak power. In control rooms across the grid, engineers will be able to more precisely and predictably manage electricity production, reducing the need to fire up costly secondary power plants. The distribution system routes power from the utility to residential and commercial customers through power lines, switches, and transformers. Utilities typically rely on complex power distribution schemes and manual switching to keep power flowing to their customers. Any break in this system caused by storms, bad weather, or sudden changes in electricity demand can lead to outages. The smart grid's distribution intelligence counters these energy fluctuations and outages by automatically identifying problems, then rerouting and restoring power delivery. Utilities can further use distribution intelligence to predict and manage electricity usage with the cooperation of their customers, leading to lower production cost.
So if they have lower production costs, you think they're going to lower your bill? Nah. By the way, did any of you see the power company here last night? There was a transformer over here that blew, probably because there's too many people on it, and they had to bring 2 big trucks and flashing lights and all that. And our granddaughter said that there was smoke coming out of the transformer and a big bang. I wasn't here then. I was here when the trucks were trying to fix it. Okay, so now let's talk about the avoiding the big 4 electrical consumers. You correctly identified those. By the way, this is the Meissner family from Sandpoint, Idaho, and they were instrumental, their parents and family were instrumental in us making the decision to get back into the country when we went to their seminar in Arizona 12 years ago.
The Ready Life, into the country.
Welcome back to the Ready Life podcast, where you are empowered to make your homestead as independent as possible for basic necessities like water, heat, food, and power. There are 4 big power consumers in your home, and if you can switch those to an alternate energy source, then you're going to reduce almost 80% of your home's power if you're using all four of these items as electric options.
Right.
And the big four are your oven range, your clothes dryer, see if I can remember this off the top of my head, your HVAC system, and your hot water.
Okay, so the big four principle is don't heat with electricity. So you've got your kitchen, stove, and oven. You've got a home heat. You've got a clothes dryer. I forgot that one when we were talking. And then we have hot water. So all of these are using electricity normally to generate heat. So what would you do then for an alternative? If you're gonna try to run off of alternative energy, what would you do instead of electricity for the heat? So want to guess on a kitchen wood stove and an oven? Anybody? A wood stove, yes. Or propane. Propane is a really good fuel. If you have gasoline and you buy it and you put it in tanks, it starts to deteriorate right away. Like maybe a month or two, it's degraded. Diesel's not quite as bad, but it does degrade. But propane has an indefinite shelf life. It never goes bad. So you could store up propane and keep it there forever. And then when you need it, it's still just as good as when you put it in the tank. And by the way, propane, you're not burning the propane, you're burning the fumes. So they don't fill the tank all the way up. If you have a 1,000-gallon tank, they'll fill it up to maybe 700, 800 gallons. And then there's a gap at the top, and the fumes are what you're using. And so like when you buy these bottles for your RV and when you turn it on, it's not squirting out propane liquid, it's a fume. And by the way, it doesn't smell. So they add a smell agent to propane so you can smell it, because if you can't smell it and it's going, it'll kill you because it's poisonous. But if you can smell it, then you go, oh, I got to shut it off. So anyway, propane is a good way to go. Yeah. Oh, really? Good thing to know. See, I don't live in a place that's that cold. So if you're in Alaska or Alberta, the propane will get cold and then it doesn't function because it's frozen, right? And it needs to evaporate in order to get the fumes. Wow. I didn't know that. That's good to know. Pardon me? I think it's minus 48 is when it's 28? Above that will work and below it, it won't. Boy, that's good to know. So what do you do if you're propane? You have to go out and just heat it? With a propane torch? With a propane torch? So in our case, we have a wood stove that is Amish made. It's a big one that has a big enough box that'll take 21-inch firewood. It's supposedly airtight. And it can cook, bake, make hot water, and heat the house all off of the wood. So that's our primary solution in our house. But think about if you're growing a garden and you're going to try to make that garden last all year, you're going to have to do some preserving, right? You're going to do some canning. What time of year are you canning and making applesauce? And you're doing it when it's hot weather. So you don't want to have a wood stove in your kitchen, and now you're trying to do some canning in big pots and all of that. So the solution is either you could do propane, or there's a thing the old timers would do called a country kitchen, outdoor kitchen, summer kitchen, there you go. And what it is it's a wood stove outside. It could be a covered shed, whatever. And then when you're doing this canning, when it's hot weather, you do it outside. So you're not heating up your house. What we've done is we bought a 2-burner, I want to say, propane camping style, sit on the table type thing. And we bought a big propane, I don't know, is it 40 gallons? It's a big one, just for an emergency. And so if we get to where we need to do canning and it's hot, we can pull that tank out and pluck it up. And then instead of doing it in the house, we can do it out on the porch and make a mess, and it doesn't matter. So anyway, there's options. But for the kitchen stove and the oven, a wood stove is a pretty standard, really good option. By the way, part of what we're going to talk about today is wind. So we brought 2 fans. So if you're getting hot, move where the fans are, or we can turn them up if we want to. Okay, the next one is home heat. Same thing. You can have a forced air furnace that's propane, or you can have a wood stove. Or there are wood. We have a neighbor who has a wood, I don't want to call it a boiler. He's got a furnace that is wood. And it's got a box like this big. And then it goes into his forced air furnace system into the house. So out in this shed on his house, he can load it up with firewood, and then it heats the house conventionally with forced air. That's an option, but the most common would be just to have a wood stove. And even if you don't have a cook wood stove, you could have a wood stove in an emergency. You can cook on top of it. You just don't have the option to bake. For heat, what we've done, we wanted to have a setup where our lifestyle was normal. Our house looked normal. Our amenities were normal. We weren't bringing on the time of trouble early by living it really hard. But behind everything was a backup plan. So we have a propane cooktop. And because propane ovens are a little finicky or whatever, Kathy preferred to have electric ovens. So we have 2 electric ovens and we have a propane cooktop. So if we get to where we can't buy or sell, or the grid goes down or whatever, we won't use those ovens. We would use the wood stove. Okay? The wood stove is a piece of art sitting in our house. But I have 27 cords of firewood split and stacked under a roof, and I don't burn firewood. But when we need it, we've got it. And so that's our backup plan. So what about a clothes dryer? That's one we didn't mention, but they mentioned on the list. Our clothes dryer is electric. What is an alternative to using a clothes dryer that's electric? A clothesline. Old school clothesline. What if you're in Alberta in the winter and it's frozen, it's 20 below 0 Fahrenheit, whatever that is? Inside rack next to the wood stove, right? That would work. And then when it's nice weather, you can do it outside. I think I even heard of people that would put them outside when they're frozen. They do dry? I'm fortunate enough not to have lived in that cold of a place. My wife grew up in Edmonton, so I hear these stories. So you could do propane or wood, and they make for off-grid people, they make propane clothes dryers. So if you want to be off-grid and you want to have more conveniences, you can have a clothes dryer. It just doesn't run on electricity. It would take a lot of electricity to do a clothes dryer. Very expensive? Yeah. They take some power? Yep. I mean, get some clothespins in the line and do it the old way. What about hot water? How would you get hot water? Pardon me? Boil it on the stove, yeah. Matter of fact, if you have a wood stove, you're going to want to have a pot of water on the stove all the time anyway, because it's going to dry the air in the house to the point you really need some humidity. So we have a little cast iron pot with a little spout on it, and just keep water in that. It just keeps going. We had a friend that heated with wood, and they just had an open pot and it would just evaporate. So you can make hot water with wood. You can make hot water with propane. We happen to have a on-demand propane hot water system. It's not a hot water tank. It's one of those when you turn the faucet on, it fires up, and it's propane. Now, because my mindset was I want to have this in the back of my mind, it's all this sustainable. What if we can't buy or sell? What if the grid goes down? What if we're in the middle of a war? What if we can't, whatever? Man-made or natural disaster, and all of a sudden your life as you know it isn't the same. What would we do for hot water option. So now I designed this so that the hot water, propane permanently wired into the 1,000-gallon tank, propane hot water heater, which doesn't have a tank, it's not heating all the time. Say the wood stove is going, all right? It's winter. Wood stove's going, and I'm trying not to use the propane because I'm going to run out eventually, right? So I don't want to use up the propane unnecessarily. So the wood stove can have a coil in the wood box, which if plumbed correctly uphill a little bit, you can have a tank, and it will, because convection will make the hot water go up, it'll circulate without a pump. So now you've got, it's called a range boiler. It's like a hot water tank, but it's a little heavier material, and it's full of hot water all the time, as long as the wood stove's going. And it'll get so hot, you have to have a pressure relief valve that'll spit it outside if it's too hot, because it can get really hot. So now, let's say we're doing that. I got the wood stove going. I have a range boiler, which we haven't put in, but it's designed to do that. And so let's say this range boiler is full of hot water, and I go to the bathroom and I turn on the hot water faucet. What's going to happen is the propane unit is going to say, turn on. It's going to get the water from the boiler. It's going to immediately shut off because it's already hot water. Now I've got hot water. So the propane turns it on and then shuts off, and the hot water is now coming from the wood stove source. Did you follow that? That's the Cadillac way to go. That's the ultimate. So you could do hot water with propane or wood. So now let's talk about the different kinds of alternative energy. Now these concepts apply to whatever kind you choose for a source. You could have solar, you could have wind, you could have micro hydro, which is making power off of water, like BC Hydro, that's hydro. So these things I'm going to show you, these three concepts, are all applicable to any of those methods, okay? So the first one is grid tied. These are the ones you normally see. Are the fans enough? I tried not to make it noisy, but we can turn them up a notch if you need it. Are you okay? Okay, let me know, or feel free to go over and just crank it up or move where you're next to it. Okay, so grid tied is the one that you normally see. Our son just did this. He lives in Illinois. $75,000, he wrote a check. The company came in, and in a couple of weeks, it was all done. It's on his roof. It's got these big old box on the side of the house. He doesn't have any batteries, but it feeds to the grid. His power bill went from $300 to $500 a month to $15. I think it was $15 a month. And so he's saving hundreds of dollars every month forever, because, and assuming the grid power price doesn't go up yet even, plus there were incentives, and we're going to talk about that saved him a bunch of money. But the point I'm getting at is people like him did this system, grid tied. When you see a house that's got solar on the roof, there's a very good chance this is the system they're talking about. And that is, it doesn't have any batteries. That means when the sun's out, it's producing power. When the sun's not out, it's pulling it from the grid. So here's an example.
This is an on-grid solar system, the most popular type of solar setup in America. To understand how it works, let's see it in action as it powers a typical American home for a day. Let's begin at night. At this point, relatively little power is being used. The fridge, some phone chargers, and maybe the heating or cooling. There's no solar right now, so electricity usage is met by power imported from the grid. In the morning, energy use spikes as the family prepares for the day. They're using kitchen appliances, hair dryers, hot water heating, and other devices. Part of their energy needs will be met with solar, but as the sun isn't very strong yet, the home will continue to import from the grid. At midday, the sun is much stronger, and the solar system reaches max output. This is also when electricity usage is at its lowest, as everyone's out for work, school, or errands. That means lots of surplus power is produced. In an on-grid system, that surplus is exported to the grid. In return, the utility pays for the power by crediting their electricity bill. In states with net metering, homeowners have the advantage of selling their power at the same rate they buy it for. In the afternoon, the sun moves downwards through the sky, causing solar output to drop. However, power usage is still low as most of the family's not home yet. The system continues to export power for bill credits. It's evening. The setting of the sun means there's no more solar. Energy use now peaks as the family returns home and runs lights, entertainment devices, and kitchen appliances. Grid energy transfers now switch direction. The home stops exporting and starts importing power instead. It's night again, marking the end of the daily energy cycle. The on-grid system imported energy for much of the day, but this gets offset by the high energy exports achieved by the system during midday and afternoon. In fact, a properly designed on-grid solar system can achieve 100% offset of a home's power requirements, which means electricity bills with zero net usage charges.
Originally, this was true, that the power company would pay you for the electricity. Just to grab a number, let's say it's 25 cents a kilowatt that you would pay to get it. They paid 25 to get it back. It didn't take too long for the power companies to say, we're getting ripped off because now we've got to turn around. We have no profit. So I'm talking United States. I'm sure Canada was the same. So they negotiated because they were required to do it. They negotiated to where now they don't pay you as much as what you would buy it. Then they negotiated again and said, we don't want to pay anything. So now you don't get paid, you bank it. So what happens in our son's situation is when he has excess power, like in the middle of the day, it goes into the grid and they have a double, what do they call it? A dual meter, two-way meter. Our old, if you're not selling to the grid, so to speak, you have a one-way meter because all you're doing is buying. But in this case, you're selling. So they have a different meter that goes both ways. It can go backwards. So when it goes backwards, you're banking it at the power company. You're helping them, but they're not giving you money. They're giving you credit. So it keeps track on the computer of how many kilowatt hours you're giving them and how many you're getting over the year. And then it ends up being a wash. The problem is now it's not even indefinite. It only goes for the year, fiscal year, whenever it started. Like in our son's case, I think it's April. And then when it gets to April, if you have banked more than what you needed, it goes away. So not only are they not paying you the same as what you pay, but they're also paying less, and now they're not paying at all. And now it's time limited, and at the end of that fiscal year, you've lost it, and the clock starts over, which doesn't matter because you're going to make enough electricity to do it again. So what I'm saying is that this video said that they buy it from you, and that's not true anymore. But it still helps a lot. Okay, the next one is a hybrid system. Now, hybrid simply means the same setup. It's connected to the grid, but it's also got batteries. Because if you have a power failure, I got a notice on my phone when we were here, there was a power failure back home. It didn't matter to us because we've got the solar running and the grid is the backup. So when the grid goes down, it doesn't matter to us unless we don't have enough power. So a hybrid system, let me back up. If you have the kind of system that our son has, the typical on-grid system, grid-tied, everything's great. And when it's dark, you're pulling from the grid. When it's sunny, you're sending it to the grid. That's all great. But what if there's a power failure? What if the transformer blows? Think about it. They have to shut you off because if there's a power failure in the middle of the night or any other time, your system on your house is no longer working. It has to shut off because the lineman's up on the pole trying to fix it. And if you're feeding to the grid and the grid shut down to keep him safe, you're going to electrocute him. And so you drop some money, just so you know. So that's why on this other system, the grid-tied, even though you have the ability to sell to the grid, if the grid goes down, you don't have it. So if it's nighttime and the grid goes down, your system goes down. You have nothing. And so The advantage of batteries is that you have your own power stored up. So this is the hybrid system. It's the same thing, except it has batteries. So now you can make that jump when the power's out, go at night when there's a power failure, and so on. So here's an example of that.
Hybrid solar systems are solar panel setups that are grid connected and include battery storage. Hybrid systems reduce reliance on the utility and provide backup power when the grid is down. In this video, we'll explain how a typical hybrid solar system works in places where time of use billing applies, such as California. Let's start with the morning. As the family wakes up and prepares for the day, there's a spike in energy usage. Solar production can't meet all of the demand, as sunlight is low early in the day. The shortfall will be met by power from the battery, if it still has charge after its use overnight. If the battery is flat, power will be imported from the utility grid. At midday, with the sun high in the sky, solar panels reach max output. Meanwhile, energy needs are low, as people are usually out of the house. Lots of surplus power is generated, which is used to charge the solar battery. The home also avoids importing power, which tends to be expensive from midday onwards under time of use plans. In the afternoon, the family's energy needs are still pretty low. Solar panel output can meet power demand as well as top up the battery. If the battery is already full, the surplus power can be exported to the grid. In the evening, everyone returns home, so energy use spikes. For most households, this period accounts for over half of all energy usage. Evenings are when solar battery storage is most valuable. Instead of buying power at pricey evening peak rates, the home can draw on the battery to meet the high demand. At night, the home will continue to be supplied by power from the battery. If the battery runs low, grid power can be imported to meet the home's needs. If the utility's off-peak electric rates are low enough, it might be economic to charge the batteries with grid power as well. To summarize, a hybrid solar system intelligently switches between using solar power, battery storage, and grid power. It allows you to avoid using grid power at peak prices, leading to bill savings. Hybrid systems are most viable in areas with time-of-use electric rates, such as California. However, there is strong demand for hybrid solar systems across the country because they can provide backup power when the grid is down. There are also significant rebates in some states that make battery storage a compelling addition to a home solar system.
So again, the difference is that the on-grid, grid-tied system doesn't have any batteries, and it's using the grid as a two-way street. And the hybrid just adds the elements of batteries so that when the power goes out, you have an alternative. Now we're going to talk about off-grid. Off-grid means you're not connected to the power grid at all. And so you're totally dependent on whatever you can do.
A home with off-grid solar is energy self-sufficient. All power comes from on-site solar panels and battery storage. There are no connections to the electric grid. In this video, we'll explain how a large off-grid solar system powers a family home. Let's start with the morning. Although the sun isn't at full strength yet, the solar array should still generate enough power to meet the home's needs. This is possible in off-grid homes where residents are careful with their electricity usage and avoid installing appliances that use too much power or using too many at the same time. At midday, the sun is high in the sky. The solar panels hit their maximum output. This is also when energy needs are lowest, as most family members are out. Surplus energy is sent to charge the batteries. This is also a good time to operate energy-hungry appliances, such as an air conditioner or washing machine. In the afternoon, the sun moves lower in the sky, so solar panel output starts to fall. However, the solar panels will still produce more power than is needed. If the batteries aren't full yet, the extra power will be used to bring them up to 100%. On to the evening. With the setting of the sun, solar panel output falls to zero. This is also when power usage spikes as family members return home and fire up electrical appliances. To meet this demand, lots of power will be drawn from the batteries. At night, the solar cycle is complete. No solar power will be generated until the following morning. Till then, all nighttime energy needs will be met by the batteries. This won't be a problem for a well-designed off-grid system. It should be able to store enough electricity to last 2 or 3 days without much sun. Of course, keeping ample backup power in reserve requires a lot of battery capacity, along with a higher number of solar panels to charge them. This makes off-grid systems expensive compared to simple grid-connect solar systems, or even solar plus storage that can use the grid as a backup. This expense is the reason very few people install completely off-grid systems, unless they live in remote areas where there is no utility grid to connect to.
So remember, these three concepts of grid tied and hybrid, a mixture with batteries, and off-grid, all apply to whatever kind of power generating you're doing. Solar, wind, microhydro, doesn't matter. They all would fit those three methods, okay? So let's say you don't want to be off-grid, you want to have some solar or whatever to generate electricity, you want to have some batteries, you want to be able to provide your basic electrical needs when you couldn't buy or sell for whatever reason, natural disaster, man-made problem, or we know from the Bible there's going to be time when you can't buy or sell in a little time of trouble. So which of these systems would be best for that scenario? If the reason you were doing it was for that, for being prepared, for being self-sustaining, which method would work best for you? Any ideas? Off-grid? Off-grid is good in that. For one thing, you would have practiced and got it to work effectively by the time you had to have it. If you had batteries, well, I would say off-grid, but let me add a fourth one, and they mentioned it very briefly. What we did is I wanted to do it myself, and normally you'd hire somebody, they're licensed, bonded, they get inspected, all this stuff. I happen to want to do it myself, but irrelevant, even if you hired it done or had help with an electrician. Our reason for doing it was for the little time of trouble. We wanted to be able to be self-sustaining when you couldn't buy or sell. Now, you don't need electricity. If the world's come to a screeching halt and you can't buy or sell, you don't need 90% of the stuff that you're using electricity for, but you need some. We've got 7 refrigeration units between freezers and refrigerators. If we don't have electricity, we're losing an awful lot of food, and it's not coming back until the next season. So it's really important to us to be able to keep those refrigeration units going. We also need a water pump, because if we can't pump water, we don't have water. And that applies whether you have a well, in our case, we're rainwater catchment, same thing, same kind of pump and everything. So for us, our goal was we wanted enough alternative energy so when times were really tough, we could keep the refrigeration units going and the water pump. I don't care about my cell phone. I don't care about electricity and the lights and all that. By the way, lights is really minor if you do, LED lights. So that's what we did. So we designed the system to be able to do that to the best of our ability. And therefore, we didn't use any of these 3 options. We're off-grid. By the way, at Washington Camp Meeting, I was doing a seminar, and one of our longtime friends came up to us and said, sometime we got to come to your off-grid compound. I said, 2 things. We're not a compound and we're not off-grid. We're just a normal house that have a backup plan. So what we did is we've got solar with batteries, and where am I going with this? I was thinking of my friends in Washington and I lost my train of thought. So we've got solar with batteries to be able to keep those critical load things working. That's all. We don't care about the rest. And as long as that works, we think we'll be fine. Now, we have learned that that's great until you get to winter and there isn't much sun. It's a short day and there's lots of clouds, and you might have 3 days in a row when it's really dark clouds. We have discovered that we don't have quite enough even though we have quite a bit. We don't quite have enough for those dark, dark days. What would you do then? Remember, your refrigeration units can't go more than a couple of days until you've lost all your food. That's if you don't open the doors. Yes?
Well, it's winter time, so you got something outside, you put it in there and it stays frozen naturally.
There you go. Do you hear that? Take your refrigeration stuff and stick it out in the snow. Hope the bears don't get it. But yeah, that's a good option. But what would be an option to keep your electricity going when your alternative energy isn't keeping up with it? A generator. Most people, I would dare say all people that live off grid have a generator. And if you lived in, off grid boondock territory with neighbors that are off grid, I'll guarantee you the generator is running in the winter sometimes. So you can have a generator that either is big enough to do the really critical things, or you could have a whole house generator that'll run everything, your dryer and your electric furnace and everything. And Costco sells both of them, by the way. About $600 you can buy a dual fuel on wheels unit. That's what we have. And we plumbed it into the propane permanently once we were done building the house. Or you can buy a great big whole house generator that's probably diesel. The good quality systems have a pure sine wave. Electricity alternating currents doing this. And one that's cheap is doing this. And that won't work for everything. And you're saying the refrigeration won't like it. So you need to have a good quality generator. But like a portable one, ours was $600, and it's 9 kilowatts on peak, 7 otherwise. That's enough to keep our batteries up and to keep the refrigeration stuff going. We don't have a whole house thing. Don't need it. I'm really intrigued with all this stuff, and I like figuring it all out and researching it. When you get right down to it, when we can't buy or sell, our very best plans are not going to be enough. And God's going to have to take care of us. But that's not an excuse to do nothing, right? If we do the very best that we can do, God will make up the difference. Like I was talking yesterday, what if you have this big garden and then you got families coming in saying, hey, we're hungry. Well, what should we do? We should help them. And God will reward us for our generosity like the widow and Elijah. And so I think the same thing. I mean, you think about it, okay, I'm going to heat my house with wood. Well, if you can't buy or sell, where are you going to get the gas and the oil for your chainsaw? Plan ahead with gas. The problem is it goes bad. I have 2 shelves full of gas cans. Now they're all empty because I learned that they're not going to last that long. Okay, so our best efforts are still going to be requiring God to fill in the blanks. And I really believe that God can make a gas can not run out.
Amen.
But and by the way, if you want to be creative, our son-in-law is an electrical engineer. He bought an electric log splitter. It doesn't make any noise. And you don't have to do this. You just put it in there. It's slow, but it works. We both have electric chainsaws. They don't make any noise. And if it's summertime when you're going to harvest this, you've got lots of sunshine. You've got electricity. So you can take that thing and mine our batteries, and you have a charger. So it could be making electricity with the sun, charging the batteries, and then you go and slap it in there and go cut firewood. If you don't do that, what's the option? You're going to cut a tree down with an axe. You're going to use a misery whip, the old-time saw, that I think we've got the technology to plan ahead and kind of be smart about this. But anyway, I'm moving on here. So now, let's say you want to invest in putting in a system of some kind, solar or whatever. We're going to use solar as an example. Here are installation incentives for British Columbia. And again, you may want to take a picture of this if you're at all interested in buying, building or whatever a system. Because this is specific. This says Canada-wide, several power incentives, including clean energy investment tax credit, a refundable tax credit of 30% of capital costs of investments until 2034. The United States has the same thing, but if you've watched the news, Donald Trump just managed to get the big, beautiful bill passed. That changed this right now, so that our deadline is 2025. So if right now you lived in the US anywhere and you said, I want to invest money and put in alternative energy, yeah, you'd get a 30% capital tax credit, but it ends at the end of the year. And so say you spend $30,000 and you get, say, just rounded off, $10,000 tax credit. A tax credit means you don't pay that taxes. It's not a deduction. When you pay tithe, it's a tax deduction. A tax credit is straight off the top. So it's better. The problem is, what if you don't have $10,000 worth of taxes to pay? And you have a $10,000 tax credit. In Canada, according to this, you can roll it over to the next year and the next year and the next year till you use it up. That's the way ours was. Now, it's going to go away in 2025. The end of the year, you get to deduct for this year only. And after that, it's gone. Now you don't get 30%. Do you want to say something? No? This is really a good thing, huh?
Yeah, I have suspicion that the government is probably reducing it.
This may not make it to 34. They're going to see, hey, that worked for Trump. Let's not do this. This is a really, really good thing. Really good thing. And it applies to anything that you can show a receipt for spending the money. So in my case, I built the system. I couldn't get a deduction for my time. If I hired a kid and paid him cash to help me, I couldn't deduct that. But I could deduct everything I have a receipt for, a cement truck, renting an auger, et cetera, all of it, nuts and bolts, everything. So it's a really good thing. Federal tax provision for clean energy extended until 2025. So this is BC, so this is going to end this year. Under this provision, businesses, including farms, can depreciate the cost of solar. Now that's depreciating it. That's different than a tax credit. At an accelerated capital cost allowance of up to 100% in the first year, except for the half-year rule, whatever that means. Agriculture Clean Technology Program if you're a farmer. Canada Green Homes Loan, offering interest-free financing to help to complete some of the more major retrofits recommended for by an energy advisor, up to $40,000, with the repayment terms of 10 years. So this is loaning money to do it. So anyway, this is off of a website in BC. Whoops. British Columbia, all BC does not currently have a solar rebate at the provincial level. That was federal. 30% tax credit is federal. This is BC. Alberta would be something similar, I would imagine. It says BC does not have a BC tax credit. It is the only province with a tax exemption for all solar panels. The alternative energy sources PST exemption also covers any necessary equipment needed for installation, including wiring, controllers, inverters, etc. So look into that for whatever province you live in, whatever state you live in. In the case of our son in Illinois, he took advantage of the tax credit of the 30%. Fortunately, he was able to do it early enough that the end of 2025 won't hurt him. Illinois also gave some similar incentive. I don't know, I think if you had the system for a couple of years, you get $5,000 back. And then there was also another local thing that was $1,000 or something like that. So check your local area and don't just confine yourself to the federal level, because there might be something that fits you. Check with your accountant, because they'll know the rules and everything, because if you just go by the website, you might miss something and end up it not working out as well for you. Thank you, Kathy. Okay, so now we're going to look at we looked at the 3 different packages, you might say, off-grid, on-grid, hybrid. Now we're going to look at solar, hydro, etc. So these are different ways to make electricity, not storing it and managing it, but making it. So the first one we're going to look at is solar. Solar has some benefits. It produces clean energy. There's no emissions, no moving parts, no noise, doesn't need water, doesn't need fossil fuels, can be located where power is needed, in other words, near your house instead of somewhere else, and can be tied into the power grid. I don't know if you want to take a picture of that, but so here's an illustration of a grid-tied solar. It doesn't have batteries, and you're hooked into the grid, so you're doing this net metering thing. Then hybrid adds the batteries to the mix, and then off-grid, like on a boat or a van or a cabin, is not connected to the grid. You'll notice this illustration shows the addition of a generator. So if you're off-grid and then it runs out, the generator can go. By the way, an inverter is the device that. Okay, let's look at this picture. Let me back up. Okay, let's look on the left. You've got the solar on the roof. The next device is called a charge controller. Think of it as a battery charger from, like our vehicles. Well, in the winter, we put a little battery low voltage thing on there to keep the battery up. That's kind of what this is. It makes sure you don't overcharge the battery. The life power thing there is the battery. So the power comes from the solar, goes to the charge controller that maintains the battery, and it goes to the battery. Then it goes to the inverter. So usually coming off of the solar and all of this and the batteries is going to be 12 volts, 24 volts, 48 volts, however you set it up. It's DC, direct current, like your cell phone. It's not this outlet in the wall, AC. That's the difference. Your house is AC, your battery stuff is DC. So because you're coming from a battery, you're trying to convert it to use it in the house, it goes through a thing called an inverter. Right here is an inverter for my computer. 110 volts. Computer is probably 12 volts. I don't know how many volts. You could look on it, it would say. So that's the purpose. The charge controller maintains the battery, and the inverter converts it to be usable in your house. Okay? Now, the thing is that if you're going to do this, don't buy a cheap inverter. Because the charge controller is one thing, but the inverter is doing all the heavy lifting. And if you buy a cheap one, like we were talking about the sine wave versus the, all of that you need a good one. You also need one that like, I know a guy, he buys these cheap ones from China, directly from China, and it'll blow out and he has to buy another one and all that. If you buy a really good one, you don't have to do anything. It's probably pretty plug and play. So anyway, that's the basics. So one other thing I wanted to mention is if you have a generator and you want the inverter to turn the generator on when it needs to, you need to make sure that the inverter can tell it that and that the generator can accept that instruction. Our $600 Costco dual fuel one that looks like this one in the picture will not start automatically. I have to physically go out there and start it. And so if you want to be able to have, like if you got a cabin and you're out there and you're not there a lot of times and you want to make sure it doesn't go bad, you want to be able to have the generator start automatically, and you just need to make sure that the generator you get will do that. Okay, so here's off-grid.
In an off-grid system, solar panels connect to a charge controller, which charges the battery. The power then flows to the inverter charger and the distribution boards. A generator can supplement power during cloudy weather or during winter. Off-grid solar systems are for places without easy access to the power grid, like remote cabins or areas where grid connection is too costly. For example, a van, a boat, or a cabin. Setting up an off-grid system takes planning. You need to figure out how much power you will use to get the correct number of panels and enough battery storage. Off-grid solar costs more upfront because you're buying batteries and more equipment. You can also use an off-grid system as a backup for your home. It can keep essential things like your fridge and lights on during a blackout.
By the way, if you have an RV here at camp meeting, you have kind of half of this already because you're plugged into the grid, but your interior stuff is running on 12 volts DC. So you have this thing built in that'll make a little noise. That's converting it and charging the battery up, which is up front in your coach. It's a deep cycle battery. You got one that starts your truck and the other one runs the coach. So all of this, what we're talking about, is really built into your RV, sort of, except for the solar. Okay, off-grid. It has the solar panels. They're called PV modules. It has a battery, a charge controller, inverter to make it house usable. Battery power during outage. Battery charged by solar using during an outage. Backup with the generator. Remote locations, cabin, boat, RV. But it costs more money. Okay, so now that's solar. Let's look at wind.
Those old windmills are the predecessors for new modern wind turbines that generate electricity. The same wind that used to pump water for cattle is now turning giant wind turbines to power cities and homes. Okay, have a look at this wind farm in the California desert. A hot desert next to tall mountains, an ideal place for a lot of wind. Here's another one on the windy prairies of Wyoming. Now, today's wind turbines are much more complicated machines than the old prairie windmills, but the principle is the same. Both capture the wind's energy. Okay, here's how it works. First, a wind turbine blade works sort of like an airplane wing. Blowing air passes around both sides of the blade. The shape of the blade causes the air pressure to be uneven, higher on one side of the blade and lower on the other. And that's what makes it spin. The uneven pressure causes the blades to spin around the center of the turbine. On the top, there's a weather vane that's connected to a computer to keep the turbine turned into the wind so it captures the most energy. Now, the blades are attached to a shaft, which only turns about 18 revolutions a minute. And that's not nearly fast enough to generate electricity by itself. So, the rotor shaft spins a series of gears that increase the rotation up to about 1,800 revolutions per minute. And at that speed, the generator can begin to produce electricity. So, why are wind turbines so tall? Well, the higher up you go, the windier it is. More wind naturally means more electricity. Larger turbines can also capture wind energy more efficiently. The blades can sweep a circle in the sky with a diameter longer than a football field. Now, what's really cool is that even a small wind farm like this one in Wyoming can generate enough electricity to power more than 9,000 homes. And larger farms can provide much more clean energy for our homes and businesses. And it's not just on land that turbines can capture the wind. Our oceans and the Great Lakes provide a reliable and consistent source of wind that we can capture and turn into electricity. The Energy Department is supporting innovative offshore wind projects that will help build some of the first offshore wind turbines in U.S. waters. As the wind energy industry continues to grow, offshore development has the potential to significantly boost domestic renewable energy production, especially in coastal areas. With more than 50% of the U.S. population living within 50 miles of a coastline, capturing wind off America's shores has the potential to provide energy to countless homes and businesses. Wind energy, on land or offshore, a reliable and renewable clean energy source.
Okay, so wind power, it was originally used to pump water on farms. Modern on-land wind farms are what we were looking at. Growing offshore wind farms are a new thing to be out in the ocean. They're clean energy, but they are moving parts that can break.
This here is a small wind turbine in the garden of a private homeowner. The turbine has a height of 10 meters or 33 feet and a capacity of 2.5 kilowatt. And this small wind turbine here belongs to a small commercial enterprise. The wind turbine has a capacity of 7 kilowatt and is mounted on an 18-meter high mast. Many farmers have good conditions to operate a small wind turbine. This turbine here has a power of 30 kilowatt and has a total height of 50 meters, which is 160 feet. Total height means highest point reached by the rotor. Here we see a very small wind turbine with a vertical rotor axis. And this small wind turbine with only 12 watts is used on a sailing ship to maintain the charge of a battery. And finally, here we see two micro wind turbines with 350 watts capacity each. The wind turbines are used together with solar power modules and batteries. This hybrid system supplies a remote transmission tower with power all year round. The key advantage and benefit of small wind turbines: they often produce electricity when the photovoltaic system is not productive. When the sun is not shining, the wind often blows. This is true, for example, in the fall and winter in Europe. The sun is weak and the wind is strong. In other countries, during the rainy season, there's a little sun, but lots of wind.
So small wind turbines can include homes, farms, businesses, and even boats. The advantage of combining wind with solar is that often wind picks up when the sun's not available, such as at night.
Electricity is very important to people. We use it to power our homes, cities, trains, and cars. One of the main ways we produce electricity is with the use of a generator. A generator is a device that converts mechanical, kinetic energy into electrical energy. A wind turbine is a very large windmill that uses the kinetic energy in wind to spin its blades. The blades spin a generator that transforms the energy into electrical energy. Often, particularly in very windy places, many wind turbines are grouped together to form a wind farm. Wind farms can produce enough electricity to power whole cities. A big advantage of wind energy is that it is a clean and renewable energy source. It does not require the burning of fuels and does not produce harmful emissions into the air. There are some disadvantages of using wind energy. The large spinning blades on a wind turbine can kill or harm flying animals like birds or bats. They can produce loud sounds that can disturb natural environments and be annoying to people. And if damaged, wind turbines can be expensive to repair.
There's a disadvantage of wind turbines, and that is they're moving parts and they can break. I have a friend that lives in Texas. He has a big wind turbine and solar. And the salesman that came around and convinced him to buy the wind system said the advantage of this wind solar system or wind generator is that if there's a really big wind, it'll kick a clutch in and it won't break because it'll stop. So he and a bunch of his neighbors bought this, and then they had a big windstorm and it didn't work and it ruined it. And so now he's got this thing on, say, an 80-foot tower. How's he going to fix it? So he took his tractor. Here's the tower. Broken wind generators up here. He took a cable and his tractor's here, and he started doing this. What do you think happened? Eventually it couldn't keep up and it smashed to the ground and ruined everything. And I don't know if today he's even fixed it. The other thing is that if you have wind, you have to have a lot of wind to do any good. Like at least 8 miles an hour to even start to make electricity. So people often say if you live in a place that has enough wind, you're cursing at the wind. And if you live in a place that doesn't have enough wind, you're cursing at the equipment because it doesn't make any electricity. So it's like, do you live in a place where it's windy all the time? This might be a good option, but most of the time, probably not. If you live at the ocean and it's constant wind, or up in some valley where it's you know. Okay, so location, location, location. Now I'm going to look at some other little, starting cheap up to expensive, little wind generating electricity items. Because if maybe you just need to be able to charge your phone, for instance. This is Amazon, it's handheld, it's 30 bucks. And the advantage of this is if you were going to buy property and you're considering to do wind, you really need to research that, whether you have enough wind. And so something like this you could hold up and see how the wind really is. This is more sophisticated. This is about 600 bucks. You could put this on the property for all year, and it would log everything every day, 24 hours a day for the year. Then you could say, is this really going to work for me? Here's the same thing, but it's powered by solar, $800. So now let's talk about micro hydro. This is where you use water coming downhill to make electricity. I really like micro hydro. Obviously, BC likes it. They call it BC Hydro because of that. Micro means it's a little one. It's home size. Okay, the idea is the water is caught uphill, goes down a pipe called a penstock, then it goes through a generator, and then it makes electricity, and then the water goes back into the creek. Okay? So here is an example. This is a Homestead micro hydro step-by-step installation.
Welcome to our step-by-step guide on setting up a hydro generator to power your homestead. Are you ready to harness the power of water and save on your energy bills? Let's get started. First, determine the ideal location for your hydro generator by analyzing the water flow and head at your site. Remember, the higher the head and greater the flow, the more potential energy you can generate. Next, select the right hydro generator for your needs, considering factors like power output, efficiency, and durability. A Kaplan or Francis turbines are best for low head applications. Once you've chosen your hydro generator, it's time to install it. Safely secure the turbine and connect it to the power system, including batteries, inverter, and control panel. Now that everything's in place, it's time to test your hydro generator. Monitor the energy production and adjust to optimize performance. Enjoy the benefits and don't forget to maintain your system for long-lasting efficiency.
Okay, step one, determine whether the property affords to do that. Calculate how high, it's called head. How high is it the distance, vertical distance between the intake and where you're going to generate the electricity. And by the way, if you go to Google Earth on your phone and you hike up to the top, it will tell you the elevation. And then go to the bottom and see what the elevation is and subtract it, and that's your head. I mean, Google Earth is running off a GPS. It's not 100% accurate, but it gives you a good idea. Then you need to calculate how much volume of water you're getting, the flow. And the way to do that is you want to know gallons per minute. So if you make a little spot where maybe a little dam or something where it's spilling out, or a culvert, you could take a gallon bucket or a 5-gallon bucket, stick it under there, start a stopwatch, stick it under there, 1, 2, 3, do it for a minute. And when you're done, you know how many gallons per minute that's producing. Keep in mind, you're going to get more rain, more water when it's rainy season, maybe, than, say, in the drought of a summer. So anyway, that's how you calculate that. Then you design the system to match. Jot this down lest I forget. Backwoods Solar. Backwoodssolar.com. They're in Sandpoint, Idaho. These guys are awesome. Everybody that works there lives off grid. Their business in town has alternative energy backup. So they are experienced. No matter who you call on the phone, they are experienced in how to do off grid, whether it's solar or hydro or whatever. They're mostly solar, but they have micro hydro systems as well. The really neat thing about these people is if you really want to do this and they have on their website their catalog, but half of the catalog is an instruction book to learn about this stuff. It's really good. And you can get a printed version sent to you. And they have a chart in there so you can analyze how much electricity you're really using. There's a thing called a kilowatt meter. Kilowatt, not kilowatt meter, kilowatt. And it's a little, I don't know, $30 device. that you plug in, say your refrigerator, you plug it in the wall and plug the refrigerator into it. And it will log how much electricity you're using. Keep in mind, a refrigerator turns on and off, on and off. You can't just say, oh yeah, I know how much it is. This thing will keep track, and then you keep track of when you put it in, when you took it out, and average it out, and it'll tell you how many watts you use per hour, or per day, whatever, and for that device. Do that to each of your major things. Then you know how, and they have a sheet to fill it out to say, this is my refrigerator, here's how many watts, and you go down the list. Then you call them up and give them that information, and they, for free, will design your system for you, whether you buy equipment from them or not, which is really generous. I think it's really cool, because I used to say in my seminars, as long as you buy it from them, they said, no, we'll do it even if you don't buy from us. The nice thing about micro hydro, if your creek runs year round, you're going to make electricity all day long, all night long, all year long. Solar is only when the sun's out. And so this is, and wind is only when it's windy enough. It has to be really windy. But hydro is ultimate if you have that option.
I'm here in the mountains of western North Carolina to take a look at a micro hydro system that is producing over 500 watts of power. This is feeding an off-grid cabin, and I wanted to show you the whole system from intake all the way down to the electrical system. The box behind me is the beginning of this hydro system. It's called a Coanda screen, and it is allowing water to flow over and be sucked in while keeping debris and other things out of the system. So the creek right now has about 200 gallons per minute flowing, and only about 110 gallons of water are going into the system. That allows the creek to continue flowing while pulling some of the water out for the hydro. In order to direct the water into the Coanda screen, a small concrete pad has been built to capture the water from these two culvert pipes. The water makes its way down here and then is channeled into a little concrete sluice here and directed over the Coanda screen.
Now the water here is moving pretty quick. A few rocks have been placed right here in front of the screen to slow the water down so that it flows nice and softly into the Coanda screen. You can see this Fernco coupling takes the water through a 90-degree T and then heads down the creek in this direction.
The next portion of the hydro system is the penstock, and that is the pipe that's going to carry the water from the source all the way down to wherever your turbines or turgo Pelton wheels are located. So the penstock is important to have both big enough to support the amount of water you need and to limit the friction loss, and it also needs to be air-free. And that means this pipe needs to be facing down the whole time and not have any up spots that could hold an air pocket. Because anytime you have an air pocket, it's going to reduce the pipe's ability to carry a full flow of water. For those concerned that the creek is dry, you can see there is easily another 100 to 200 gallons of water flowing past at this moment that's not here into the turbine system. I just walked down to the end of the penstock where the permanent magnet alternator, or PMA, is resting. This is the powerhouse that's generating the electricity to be sent to the house. So how this is working, the 50 feet of drop or head pressure in the penstock is producing about 22 psi of pressure. That is then sent to nozzles that point down to the cups or spoons hooked up to this. That's called a Pelton wheel. That is basically pushing that wheel around very quickly and turning the motor to allow electricity to be made. Let's step down here and take a look at this PMA. First of all, we have a large ball valve which allows the system to be turned off for maintenance. It has this massive union to allow this whole system to be disconnected. And so it goes from 4-inch pipe here, reduces down to 3-inch pipe. The homeowner has put a piece of glass over this unit so that you can see the moving parts, but it also keeps it dry in there. The static pressure of this system is about 22 psi. With the system running, it's dropped down to about 10 psi, which is still enough to produce somewhere around 500 watts. There is a gauge down here. Now the homeowner has locked down the turbine on this nice platform, and that prevents a lot of noise from happening because the system is locked down so tight. That 3-inch pipe skirts all the way around the unit and has keys that sweep in and reduce down to 2-inch. Now there are 4 nozzles on this system. 2 of them are 19 millimeter, 2 of them are 16 millimeter. Basically it's 0.6 and 0.75 inch. And that's what has the nozzles that go in there and hit that Pelton wheel that's underneath this spinning PMA.
There's basically 2 kinds of batteries. One are like in your RV coach battery is a deep cycle or a golf cart battery that is, it's not like you're starting your car. They really can't go dead without hurting your battery. The other ones can go down and up and down and up. So this deep cycle, they're bigger, heavier batteries. They can go down and up. So those are liquid acid batteries. They have a cap you take off. You got to put water in it once in a while. That's like in your car, okay? Lithium batteries are the newer technology. They don't require maintenance. They're what your electric cars are running on. That's what your cell phone's running on. And those are a great way to go. When we did our solar about 8 years ago, the cost of lithium batteries for solar was really expensive. And I wanted to buy new because I wanted it to last while I could afford to do it and not go on the cheap and then I'd have to replace them. I know a guy that he would buy used lithium batteries out of a wrecking yard, out of an electric car, but right now he has next to his garbage can a whole pile of those that he had to replace. Now, lithium batteries are cheap. And if you look at the difference between the lifespan and the cost and all of that, lithium is a really good way to go. As far as length of life, solar panels will last you probably 25 years before they start deteriorating in capacity. They're not dead. They still make electricity, but they may be 90% of what they used to be, but that's a long time. So solar panels are great. Batteries, lead acid batteries, we have forklift batteries. They're like this big, and I have 24 of them that cost $13,000. And those things are supposed to last 11 years, and we're in at 8 years, we'll see. I hope they go longer. But if the day comes that we have to replace them, I'm gonna do lithium. And the lithium, the advantage of the lead acid batteries, like in your car, is that they will work when it's freezing. And you get lithium, it's not good to be really cold. I don't know where the threshold is. But if it's freezing, you can use them, but you can't charge them without hurting them. So basically, you'd need your lithium batteries like in a garage or something. Then the question is, you've heard about Tesla cars catching on fire. You're gonna have those batteries in your house? People do. I don't know. I haven't researched that, but so that I would say the lifespan of the batteries of either kind is going to be over 10 years at least. And the solar panels will be probably as long as you live. I'm going to skip now. I'm going to just tell you about one other concept that's geothermal. If you live where you have a hot spring, right up the road is a hot spring, then you might be able to get hot water and they can make electricity from it. There are commercial geothermal places like, what is it, Iceland or Greenland? They generate all their electricity from the geothermal in the ground. It's not practical for us at a home level because we don't have that in our yard, right? So I'm going to skip that. Another option is pedal power, and I'm going to show you a little clip here about that. By the way, I'm going to skip the video part, but this is a handheld crank deal. If you could have this in your emergency kit, and you can plug in your phone and crank on it, and it'll make it work, okay?
I'm going to show you two of the most unique generators in the world that you've probably never seen before. Now I say that because these things are the kind of generator you use to generate power anywhere and at any time. But these are not the little devices you might remember as a kid. They really serve an actual purpose, and they might give you some power when you really need it the most. Our first generator is the smaller of the two. It's the K-Tor Pocket Socket, and it's designed for charging USB devices up to 1 amp. Now the first surprise is this is actually made in the USA. As soon as I unbox this, I could tell it's well made, and it weighs in at just under a pound. It's really compact, and this design is super clever. They've actually integrated a flip-out handle into the lever itself. And it's easy to use. You basically just spin the lever, and as you rotate it, you're going to crank electricity out of that USB port. There's a lot of cheap versions of these out there that are made in other countries, and they're nothing like this one at all. This can charge up an iPhone, an iPad, flashlights, even double and AAA rechargeable batteries. And if you want to take this on a trip, this cable is perfect because on one end is a regular USB plug, but there you've got USB-C, Apple Lightning, and then a micro USB. You plug in the device, put the other end in the USB port, and start cranking. But you don't want to go too fast. You're supposed to do it about 2 times per second, and that just feels like kind of a steady pace. Now your hand might get tired. Unfortunately, they included this strap in the box. It's simple, but it works. You just put it around your hand and the device. Now you don't have to grip it anymore. You just kind of balance it with your left hand and crank the handle with your right. Now in terms of how much power you're going to get out, that really depends on the type of device you have and how fast you're cranking within that couple of times a second. For my test, I connected it to my iPad and I cranked it for just about a minute and I gained 1% on the battery meter. Now that might not sound like a lot, but if you're in the middle of a crisis or you have no power and you're out in the middle of nowhere, this thing can be an absolute lifesaver. Now the pocket socket's good, but it still is small and it might not be big enough for what you need. So fortunately there's another option. And this is the biggest one they make. It's the K-Tor PowerBox 50. 50 means 50 watts, but it's also capable of putting about 3 amps of power out. That's a lot of power from something that you actually are cranking with your hands or your feet. And this model comes partially unassembled, but it's not hard to put together. You don't need any other tools. The only thing you need is an Allen wrench, and they actually include that in the box. The reason they break it down like this is because a lot of people might be packing this for a trip or shipping it somewhere else, but once you get it together, you don't really ever have to take it apart again. Together this looks more like a piece of exercise equipment, and in a way it kind of is because you're going to generate the power yourself, but pedaling this is a lot easier than you would think. Now this is much more of a universal style model because it doesn't have a USB plug, it actually has a cigarette style outlet. And with this you can really do anything. If you want to charge computer devices, you could just get a simple adapter, plug it in the outlet, and now you've got 2 USB plugs. And if you have kids, this can be a surprising thing for them to use. Kira just started pedaling. She had no problems at all. She wasn't even wearing shoes, which is not the right way to do it. But you can see that there's really not a lot of effort involved while you're pedaling it, but it's still better to get some exercise than none at all. This is just a 12-volt fan, and you can see the minute I start running those pedals, the fan turns on. And it is a regulated outlet, so even if your pedal speed changes a little bit, you are going to get pretty stable power coming out. But of course, the minute you stop pedaling, anything you're powering is going to stop. And because of the size of this unit, you can even charge up batteries. Now it's designed to do deep cycle type, but I only have my lawnmower battery and I wanted to put it to the test. Now when I measured the voltage coming off of the battery, I was getting about 11.85 volts. And hooking it up to charge your battery is really easy. You just plug in the cigarette plug, and on the other end you've got these 2 alligator clips, and they include this cable in the box. Now once you've got everything connected, you just need to find a place to put the unit down. But the way it's designed, it really doesn't do well on a real smooth surface. So what I found was you'll want to put down a piece of carpet, or in my case I had this rubber mat. And I started pedaling, and after 3 minutes I checked the voltage on the battery again, and it had gone up just about 1/10 of a volt. And while that isn't much, if you kept at it, you definitely could charge the battery up. And now I wanted to see if this pedal unit could actually charge one of these Jackeries. Now this is a 300 watt model, and I'm using the car charger, and I plugged it right into the pedal generator and started pedaling. And the input gauge showed me getting between about 20 and 40 watts, so this thing worked pretty well, and with enough time you could charge the Jackery up. So overall I was really impressed with these. I love that they're made in the USA, the build quality's good, and while they're not for everyone, they're perfect for somebody that wants a reliable power source when there really are no other options.
I'm here in Rochester, New York. This place used to be the bike capital of America. It even had a national magazine about bike paths. And it's the home of University of Rochester astrophysicist, blogger, and NPR contributor Adam Frank. He's going to help us figure things out. Hey, Adam.
Hey, Adam, how's it going? So the first question is, how much energy does my house use anyway? I mean, there's the lights, the air conditioner, the microwave, the dryer, the refrigerator, the water heater. And it all adds up to about 900 kilowatt hours every month.
So where does that energy come from?
Coal burned at this Rochester power plant. And water that turns the turbines at this hydro station on the Genesee River. Could Adam here generate that energy instead? After all, before the Industrial Revolution, we all depended on the power of humans and animals. So let's get set up. Adam's legs turn the wheel. The wheel hooks up to the generator and turns that motion into electricity. And that electrical energy is stored in the battery so that I can use it later on even when Adam isn't pedaling. Now, if Adam's gonna power my house, just like that power plant, he's gonna need some fuel. This is the garbage plate, a Rochester delicacy. It contains about as much energy as a cup of gasoline, roughly 2 kilowatt hours. Unfortunately, Adam's not a very efficient machine. He can only convert about a quarter of the fuel he eats into energy. And some of that energy is just going to, keeping him alive. His lungs breathing, his heart beating, his digestive system digesting. With the energy that's left, an elite cyclist can generate about 0.4 kilowatts for an hour. But Adam, he's not an elite cyclist. And I need him to go for a lot longer than an hour. If he pedals for 8 hours a day, the best he's going to be able to maintain is about a quarter of what the elite cyclist can do. And that sums up to about 1 kilowatt hour per day. That would be enough to keep this lamp going, but remember, our whole system, it's inefficient. Some of that energy gets lost on its way through the generator, and some on the way from the generator down to the battery. So at the end of the day, there's only about a half of a kilowatt hour in the battery. If he pedals all day for a month, scarfing down 120 garbage plates, he'll store away a grand total of 16 kilowatt hours. The same amount of energy in half a gallon of gasoline.
Remind me, how much does your house need again?
900 kilowatt hours per month. It would take 50 Adams pedaling over time to power my house. And it would take the entire population of New York City to power every house and business in Rochester. And that, Bookie McReader Pants, is why you can't power your house with a bicycle.
So pedal power is not a good option. So the choice is, what is the best options? And I would like to suggest, we looked at 5 different options. We looked at solar, wind, microhydro, geothermal, and pedal power. And we know geothermal isn't going to work, and we know pedal power is not going to work. So it's down to solar, wind, and microhydro. So which of these depends on your property? It depends on, for instance, whether you have water dropping 100 feet at so many gallons per minute year-round, and whether you could legally get away with it or do it incognito and not end up in prison, or wind, whether you have enough wind that you wish you didn't live there, or whether it's a broken down machine like my friend in Texas, or solar. Solar is the best, and the best is to combine it with one of these others. So if you have a property that can do wind, or if you have a property that can do microhydro, you would still want solar, because solar by far is the best, and it's the least expensive, and it has no moving parts, and it'll last 25 years.
To be aware of new videos like this one, be sure to subscribe to the Preparing for the Time of Trouble channel. For more free videos and downloadable audio podcasts, as well as handouts, go to www.preparingforthetimeoftrouble.com. Topic categories include recordings of live seminar presentations, country living, sustainable gardening, homestead remedies, how to be self-sufficient when the grid goes down, wild edible and medicinal plants, hydrotherapy, and end-time Bible prophecies. To take advantage of these free resources, go to preparingforthetimeoftrouble.com.